Good afternoon. Monday, August 9th, 2010. I'm Christopher Green and you're watching Green Capital. It should be clear, it should be self-evident that our entire economic system and the stock market in general is rigged. Period. It's being artificially inflated by the federal government, I believe, through big banks. Okay, when I say that, I'm talking about the Goldman Sachs of the world. I'm talking about the big institutional trading firms. It wouldn't surprise me to learn in the next few years that the federal government has been purchasing S&P futures, Dow Jones futures to artificially prop up our situation. As you can see today, the stock market's up about 60 points. And they keep force-feeding life support into a system that is broken. And you see, nobody out there is talking about the fact that everything that we've been force-fed over the past 20, 30 years or longer is total BS. And the system itself has failed us. That includes the SEC, that includes the Federal Reserve, that includes people like Bernie Madoff being allowed to go out and defraud consumers of not just millions, but billions of dollars, with complete lack of oversight from the Securities and Exchange Commission. And to top it off, you've had a federal government and a Federal Reserve Board, through people like Alan Greenspan, help to propagate one of the biggest artificial bubbles in history that we had ever seen, that resulted in the bloodbath that we experienced in 2008, where real estate prices in general are still declining. In fact, most economists expect a further decline as we move into the end of the year. Now, I've heard people discuss that, gosh, it looks like the United States could be in an equivalent situation as Japan was in its lost decade. You know what, guys? We would be lucky to get off that easy. When Japan went into their lost decade and had to cut rates down to zero, they had 2% real unemployment. Okay, they had a savings rate north of 10%. And they had GDP far exceeding the anemic 2% GDP growth rate we're experiencing here in the United States. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, is likely to be revised downward below 2%. Okay, so we would be lucky to get off that easy. Now, you talk about guys like Bernie Madoff running these Ponzi schemes. God, why don't we point the finger at the biggest Ponzi scheme in existence today, which is the United States of America in general. It's our economic policy. It's the fact that we've allowed career politicians, that we've allowed uber-wealthy businessmen with golden parachutes to bring this country to its knees, while they make a cheerful exit with $40, $50 million like the Hewlett-Packard CEO did today without any repercussions. Because what's happened, folks, is the uber-wealthy and these career politicians are so corrupt, they only care about themselves. They don't care about the citizenry at all. And so what they've done is they've transferred wealth in an enormous scale. That figure was about $15 trillion in 2008. And it was taken from you and I, the common man, and redistributed to that uber-wealthy top 1%. And don't think for a minute that that's an accident. It's not. Now, it's true that there's probably a lot of idiocy in Washington, and there's a few out there that maybe didn't see 2008 coming. But let's get real. There's a lot of smart people out there. I'm sure a lot of you watching this video are very smart. I'm a smart guy, very sharp. All of this was planned, and planned for a reason. Now, I'm not saying I have a crystal ball, and I don't necessarily know what the end-all reason is. Okay, but I can tell you that if it was you and I sitting at the top of things, and we wanted to implement massive change, the first thing we would do is take wealth away from the common man. We'd take it away from the people, just like the federal government has done today. Not many people know this, but the federal government is the biggest holder of residential real estate at the moment. Isn't that interesting? Our federal government, indirectly through the big banks that they just bailed out, own the majority of the real estate in this country. Real estate equals wealth. And in addition to that, the banksters, as I like to call them, and I've heard others call them, they're bigger than they were before. In fact, the top major banks in this country used to have about, I think, 30 to 40% market share, okay, of all consumer deposits. They now have north of 60%. So things have gotten bigger. And to top it off, we've had a merger of state and corporate powers in every major industry that exists in our economy, whether it be housing, whether it be the banks, whether it be insurance companies or autos or healthcare. This isn't a capitalist society anymore. No, this is a society run by frauds at the top that collude together for their own personal gain. It is so obvious. And what hurts me is that we are now moving into one of the greatest depressions that we have ever seen. And most people don't see it coming. They're still blinded by the media, the great media that's going to tell you we're in a recovery. They're still blinded by the idiots on CNBC, the same guys that told you to buy Bear Stearns and Merrill Lynch and AIG right before they went to zero. They still believe that. And they're not awake to reality. They're not awake to the fact that we are running out of time. And by the end of the year, it is my prediction that it will be self-evident to everybody. It'll be self-evident to the common man that our entire system has been rigged. It's been rigged for years, and there is no recovery. We are still in a period of slow growth and hard times ahead of us, and it's going to get materially worse. And that's the sad part, because many of those that are blinded to these events, that aren't preparing now, that aren't taking the necessary action to prepare themselves for what's to come, are going to be caught with their pants down just like they were in 2008. Now, I don't want that to happen to any of you. I want you to be prepared. I want you to see the light, so to speak, of what really is at hand right now. I want you to see not what you wish for, not what you hope for, but I want you to see reality. And I do think that some good things can come from this. That's all I have for today. Good luck, and until next time.